What's up, everybody? We are back. Coop's Fantasy Football Fiasco, breaking down the divisions. And first and foremost, I just want to say, not sure if you guys saw it or not, but Fantasy Alarm won an award at the FSGA Best Mid-Size Video Content. Dude, shout out to the guys, Matt Deutsch and everybody behind the glass that helps put these together, put together cool intros, and to all the creators, Howard Bender, Britt, Kev Tompkins, everybody, it's a lot of work, man, but we're putting it together. We're trying to help you guys win your league. So awesome that to get that award, dude. And kind of, give us a little something for all the hard work we put in. But for those that don't know, here's what we're doing today. I'm going through every division. So we've got 3 divisions up already. NFC East already been done. Both the Souths are done. And I'm looking at the weapons, right? What's interesting for fantasy football? What's interesting for us? And I'm trying to figure out who's going to be here next year, who's leaving, where the opportunities are, right? And how we can take advantage right now in our dynasty leagues, make trades like before guys get new roles or before they go to new teams, just any way that we can get a leg up on everybody else. And one big way to do that is look at the contracts and say, okay, you know what? This team can't bring anybody in. So somebody from the team is going to have to step up here, right? Or, where's T. Higgins going to go? Okay, this is where he's probably going to go. Thank you guys in the chat. Anthony on Cooper popping in. Love you guys and appreciate you. So here's how it's going to work. I'll bring up the first team as an example so you get a good idea. I went through and I wrote articles on all these teams. If you want it in writing, you can check that out too. I color coded kind of the weapons depth chart here. So red. What that means is they're either they're all at risk of being cut or traded, right? So Mac Jones, for instance, not really at risk of being cut, but there's rumor he might get traded. Green means that their roster spot is safe and their role is safe. Yellow means their roster spot is safe, not necessarily their role. And then white are free agents, whether restricted, unrestricted, whatever. So that's how we're going through. That's going to be the color code. And we're going to break down for all you guys, right? So why not get started right now? New England Patriots on the clock here. And that's the word. The word is they're looking to move Mac Jones. And people, we love to make jokes and be like, oh, what are they going to get for him? A ham sandwich, right? Which, that is funny. But the reality is that every team individually scouts these prospects and they have their own takes a lot of times on these guys. And that doesn't necessarily fully change based on what we see because these teams are arrogant. These organizations think that they can fix these guys. They think that they're right. They think they're the best. That's why you see a guy like Sam Darnold. He went out, played 3 years for the Jets, played pretty poorly. And then the Panthers traded a second, a fourth, and a fifth to get Sam Darnold after 3 years. Same situation as Mac Jones, where they had 1 year left on the deal. They could pick up his 5th-year option. So Mac Jones could get something. I don't think he's going to get a second-round pick like Josh Rosen did or Sam Darnold did because he wasn't as highly drafted. He went like 15 overall. Those guys were like 1st and 2nd overall. But I think Mac Jones could fetch a deal kind of similar to what you saw for like a Baker Mayfield. Right. Yeah, Anthony, a lot of red and white on there. And Toronto Dave, Hunter in the henhouse, maybe no longer in the henhouse. We'll have to see. We'll get to the tight end shortly. But so Mac Jones, I think the deal Baker Mayfield got traded for from the Browns to the Panthers, it was essentially a 5th-round pick where if he played more than 70% of the snaps, it became a 4th-round pick. And I think that kind of deal makes a lot of sense for both, the Patriots and Mac Jones, where they say, okay, and whatever team takes him, they say, okay, give this guy a shot. If he turns into your guy, you give us a better pick back. And if he doesn't, then the pick ends up being whatever, right? Like, let's say you're the Giants, for instance, and you want to know if Daniel Jones is the real deal or not, right? And he's coming off an injury, so you kind of have an excuse to start your other guy regardless. What if you do like a conditional trade like that, where it's like, okay, 5th-round pick, and if the guy plays 70% of the snaps, now it's a 4th-round pick, and if he makes the Pro Bowl, now it's a 3rd-round pick, right? And you send that over, and what you do is you compare the guy to Mac Jones, to Daniel Jones, and if Daniel Jones is way better than Mac Jones, great, you learn something. You learn that Daniel Jones might be the guy. But at least if it's even close at all, and both these guys are bad, now you've learned something that matters, right? You've actually found out that neither of these guys are the guy, and that's honestly to these teams at the most important position in football, that's worth a 4th or 5th-round pick. I mean, Trey Lance pretty much didn't even play at all, and he went for a 4th-round pick. So I think they're going to get something from Mac Jones. What it's going to be, we'll have to see. But don't scoff at this idea of him being traded because quarterbacks are just valued more highly than other positions. So he will probably get traded for something. You know what I mean? Could be end up being a 6 or whatever. Doesn't matter. Bailey Zappi, he's not the guy either. He's in a spot where he could make the roster as the backup, but they're likely drafting a quarterback at 3. That's what everybody's saying. So Bailey Zappi kind of ends up in, you know, honestly for him the worst spot of the two, because Mac Jones getting traded could get a fresh start somewhere. Bailey Zappi, he could end up getting stuck as the backup behind a guy they drafted 3 overall, which means he's just not going to get a shot, right? The thing with Bailey Zappi is he was actually released at one point. Any team could have added Bailey Zappi if they wanted him. So we're already talking too much about Bailey Zappi. There was too much local hype for this guy when he was never really going to be anything. So there you go. Pat should do. Anthony says Pat should do what Houston did: draft a QB and trade up, take another player. I mean, now you're preaching to the choir. Now you're talking to like the insane homer in me. That, you know, I try to be unbiased, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, let's trade up for a quarterback at 3 and then take Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4. Right? Like that's what you want as like a homer fantasy wishing guy. But the reality is that it's very difficult to do that. And when you do that, if they were going to do that, they should take a quarterback and then they should take Joe Alt at left tackle. They shouldn't take, you know, maybe they will. It's just very rare they do exactly what we want to do in fantasy football land. Let's get to running back. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson, he's locked in. He's the guy. The only question is whether they want to supplement him with someone else. But I mean, I could see him coming out and just being a full down, every down workhorse, right? For Alex Van Pelt, we saw what Alex Van Pelt, he's the new offensive coordinator coming over from the Browns. We saw what he was able to do with Nick Chubb and even with Jerome Ford. I mean, the success of Jerome Ford, that's why Kevin Stefanski and these guys were up for awards, and that's why Alex Van Pelt is getting paid big bucks to come over here. So, yeah, excited for Ramondre. Zeke, they could bring him back. They could not. He was not super efficient, but he got the job done in the situations they asked him to. He was decent on screens, wasn't that good at pass blocking, and, you know, he could get a yard when he needed a yard. And that's exactly what Zeke is. If I'm Zeke, though, there's a lot of other spots you might go to. In fact, we're going to talk about one team in this division that could potentially use Ezekiel Elliott. So we'll have to see. Kevin Harris is a guy that's been released from the team and added to the practice squad. So he'll be fighting for his, and then added back and everything. He'll be fighting for a roster spot with everybody else. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots do go out and draft a running back, not like the top one off the board, but just somebody to be a cheap backup behind Ramondre. It's been the philosophy for years to replace guys through the draft, right? They drafted Ramondre the year after they drafted Damien Harris in the first round. So don't be surprised at all by that. Wide receiver is where it gets dicey and where it gets bad. Because here's the thing. People are probably looking at this and saying, oh, why aren't Devontae Parker and Juju Smith-Schuster red here with the other guys that could get released? Because the contracts for these guys, there's really no benefit to releasing them. Devontae Parker got an extension last year, a 3-year extension. If they were to cut Devontae Parker without a post-June 1 designation, it would actually because of the contract magic, it would increase the amount of dead cap for him this year. Money would become due and would actually have a negative like $1.5 million cap hit. No joke. Devontae Parker, if they're going to release him, they have to do it as a post June 1 designation. So for those unfamiliar with what that means, you just hear it offhand. Post June 1 designation used to be that if you waited until after June 1, anyone you cut after that point, their contract could be spread over the next 2 years. So this year and next year, the dead cap, and basically would just free up cap space for this season. The league just saw teams doing that, and it was bad for free agents because like they didn't have a chance. They were holding on to these veterans and releasing them, and then they couldn't land another team before the season started, or like all the good jobs got taken. So they created this rule where you could take 2 players and say, okay, we're going to pretend like we waited until after June 1 to cut this guy, but we're going to cut him right now. So you get to designate 2 guys if you want as post June 1 designations and get that benefit without forcing that guy to basically sit around and wait to sign him with a new team until after June. I think that's a good rule. So if you were to do that with Devontae Parker, they would still only save like $1 million this year, and they would have a ton of dead cap spread out over the next 2 years. Same with Juju. There's really no benefit to cutting him this year. Both players, though, could be traded. And if they were traded based on the contract, you could save some money there. For instance, if they cut Juju, it does nothing. You literally just get the roster spot and you have all the dead cap, basically. If you trade him and you have $5 million in dead cap, but you could have $5 million in savings, the other team picks up the $5 million. So Devontae Parker and Juju Smith-Schuster, and I'll tweet this out later. My thought process is with these 2 guys, if Any team out there wants these guys for even a symbolic 7th round pick, they can probably have them. Which you say, okay, who the heck would want them? There are teams out there that might want these guys, not just because they're good players, but also with the way the compensatory pick formulas work. Sometimes you're better off trading for guys than you are signing them. And I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but I will give an example. If the Bengals were to let T. Higgins walk for nothing and he were signed with another team, they would get a 3rd round comp pick back. But if they sign other players, that cancels out that comp pick, right? Incoming free agents. So if they trade for a guy like Juju or Devontae Parker, that doesn't cancel out that pick. So if you trade a 7th, it actually saves you a 3rd round comp pick, right? And it's exactly what the Patriots did when they traded for Devontae Parker because they had guys leaving, the defensive back that went to the Chargers. The undrafted free agent defensive back that went to the Chargers escapes me right now. When they let him walk, they traded for Devontae Parker to not cancel out that pick. A team might use that same thing with this team. So it's not crazy to see these guys traded. I know it's kind of minutia here, and we're not going to try. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, like I said, but that's why those guys could get moved. Now, Demario Douglas, he's like, to me, the best fantasy asset out of this pass catching group across the board, right? Demario Douglas, pop. He looked good last year, right? Tyquan Thornton, jury's still out on him. He might just end up being a field stretcher, but at least we know he's fast. Kendrick Bourne is a guy they like. He's a good locker room guy. He's got a secret handshake with like everybody on the team. They might want to bring him back just because they want to keep the culture. He, mentioned that he was open to coming back to the team. Shout out to our boy Anand Nanduri that was out there with the draft, ran into Kendrick Bourne, was talking to him, got a selfie. We like to have boots on the ground, so he's open to coming back. So we'll have to see, man. Jalen Reagor, not going to happen. Matthew Slater, he's probably gone as he's a Belichick guy. Had arguably the best special teams career as a non-return guy you can have. It's either him or Steve Tasker from the Bills. I hope Steve Tasker gets in the Hall of Fame because I think Matthew Slater deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Kayshon Boutte, a prospect that people loved before the draft, but he just didn't really pan out, And then Trey Nixon, again, he was like the last Ernie Adams guy. Like the Ernie Adams is Belichick's, secret advisor that was hiding in the dungeon, like go scouring the rule book and finding all these guys. Trey Nixon was the last one of those guys, and he's probably gone too. That's why I have him in red. So that's it, man. I think they need to draft wide receivers. They're not going to be able to really sign them. I don't know who would you're not going to get, even if the Colts don't tag him, you're not going to convince Michael Pittman to come over and play with whoever the 3rd best quarterback in this draft is. So that's not happening. So that's where you're at, dude. At tight end, this is where it's interesting. Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, Pharaoh Brown, all free agents, dude. All unrestricted free agents. So they have no tight end signed right now. If they could bring back Hunter Henry, great. I think he's a good 2-way tight end. Mike Gesicki is probably gone. They didn't utilize him at all out of the slot like they said they were going to. So he could be fantasy relevant if he lands at the right spot, but he's basically just a big slot receiver. So he needs to land somewhere and be utilized like Evan Engram with the Jaguars, right? Tommy, shout out everybody in the chat. What's happening, dude? So yeah, here's what I would do. If you can't get Hunter Henry and you can't get Dalton Schultz, those are the top 2 guys. This is what I would do at the tight end position. And again, just my personal opinion, but I do a lot of research into tight ends, right? You got Alex Van Pelt coming over from the Cleveland Browns. He just used David Njoku, an incredibly athletic tight end, as his starter. He had Harrison Bryant as the tight end too, right? What I would do with Alex Van Pelt is you bring over Harrison Bryant, who knows the system, right? He's a free agent right now. So you bring him over to be your tight end 2 or even your tight end 1, along with Alex Van Pelt. You keep Pharaoh Brown, even though he's an unrestricted free agent. Pharaoh Brown did 2 stints, not 1, but 2 different stints where he played for the Browns under Alex Van Pelt. So he knows the system. So you keep Harrison Bryant, you keep Pharaoh Brown, and then you go and try and find a reclamation project with, go look around and find who the most athletic tight end is out there that's a free agent that could just, maybe they just haven't had the right spot yet. I'll give you the number 1 example, Noah Fant. Noah Fant played for the Broncos, he's part of the Russell Wilson trade, ended up with the Seahawks. Seahawks have a bunch of weapons like DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. He just didn't really get a shot. This is a guy who ran a 4.5 40, super athletic. He could potentially be that David Njoku role if it pans out. If you can't get Noah Fant, I guess you could go for a Gerald Everett. He's going to be expensive. Or, guys like, Albert Okwuegbunam, super athletic tight end that's out there kind of floating around. So, again, Patriots, if they could draft a Brock Bowers or a Jatavian Sanders, I would love that. But That's how I would piece together this tight end room for cheap and try and build something Alex Van Pelt knows how to do. It would be Noah Fant as David Njoku, Harrison Bryant as Harrison Bryant, and Pharaoh Brown as a guy that's worked with Alex Van Pelt multiple times now, man. So there you go. That's what I would do on that front. And that's it for the New England Patriots, man. That's my team. I'm excited for these rebuild years. I'm excited to be an underdog again. And hopefully they bring in the right quarterback at 3. Or if they don't like 3 quarterbacks, they bring in Joe Alt or Marvin Harrison and just make the right call and build this team the right way. I don't think this team should really be trying to go all in and compete right away. They need to burn off some of these old contracts. They have to undo a lot of very weird things that Bill Belichick was doing, like the Devontae Parker extension and the Juju contract, right? So, like, I think they should focus on rebuilding the interior and offensive and defensive line and go that way, build up the quarterback. And then when it's time to compete, you go out and you spend up on luxury picks like wide receivers and running backs and cornerbacks and edge rushers, right? The best thing this team could do this year is come in dead last and to get another really good high-end player in the draft. So that's what we're looking at here. Before we get to the next team, just wanted to mention to you guys, I've been tooling around with our sponsors, FFPC, and they have a best ball platform now. They're getting in on the best ball game. Never Too Early best ball tournament is already open right now over at FFPC. Drafts are available daily, 2-hour clock or 6-hour clock, or the sit and go 30-second clock if you really just want to bang out a draft. Those are scheduled in advance, so you can go get set up on that. Take a shot, either $25,000 or $10,000 grand prize. That's in the bid. Never Too Early best ball contest. They got some big prizes over there, man, and you can play high stakes games over there too. So you can hit this QR code that's right in front of my face, or go to myffpc.com. Use promo code Coop. COOP, they'll give you $25 off when you deposit $35 or more. So go get set up right now. We're doing, we already do our Dynasty. We do our redrafts over there. We do our high stakes stuff, but we do the playoff contest. We do it all. So I'm like, I'm going to get in on the best ball too. It's never, for me, whatever you got, whatever contest you got, I'm going to play, I'm going to win. That's it, dude. So go over to myffpc.com, use promo code Coop, and you can win as well. We got some, draft contest things coming up too. So go get that checked out. We'll talk about the Dynasty Leagues a little later on. Now I want to get over. We just did the Patriots. For those just joining us, we're going through the AFC East. So let's get to the Bills here. Again, for those joining us, what we have here is the white players on the chart are free agents. The green players on the chart are guys that I believe are going to be not only be on the team, but have the same role and have a high-end role. The yellow players on the chart will be on the team, but their role could change, so their contracts are safe. And the red players are guys that could be released or traded, right? And people might look and say, oh my God, Stephon Diggs released. No. I'm going to get to Stephon Diggs. It's very intricate, but there's a reason he has to be red based on the rules I've made for myself. The red for traded or released. Shout out Tommy in the chat. Yeah, I did say I would win everything except a tomato eating contest. I did lose a bet to Tommy and have to eat a tomato like an apple on a show once. And that was, honestly, I'm kind of coming around on tomatoes, man. That might have been the day where I decided that tomatoes aren't so bad. When they're really ripe and good and with a little salt, not just eating one like an apple. That's insane. And I still have like seeds in my keyboard. Way more seeds than I thought when you eat an apple like that. Way more juice, way more seeds. But anyway, let's get to this team here. Josh Allen, not much to say at quarterback. He's locked in. He's the guy. The question is, what do they do with the backup, right? And it's interesting. Kyle Allen, is what he is. There's a name floating around out there all of a sudden that I think they could be very interested in bringing back, which is Mitch Trubisky. He did the one stop there. The plan was he was going to stop there, play behind Josh Allen, learn from the people they had, and then leave and try and be a starting quarterback again. And he did that with the Steelers. It didn't pan out. You know what? He might be content just being a backup now. They might be able to bring him back on a decent deal, and I think they liked him over there. In fact, I know he got along well, and the fans liked him. So I could see Mitch Trubisky landing over there. If not, maybe you bring Kyle Allen back, or you could go and try and get a mobile quarterback to keep the offense as close to what it is if Josh Allen goes down. So like Tyler Huntley is out there now. PJ Walker is an option. And then I guess, Matt Barkley is familiar with the team, but I don't know if they're going the Barkley route. But yeah, Josh Allen's locked in. Like, the thing is with this team, they need to free up cap space somewhere. So they're not going to go out and pay for like the even a Tyrod Taylor, they're not going to pay like $5 million for a backup because they're like $50 million in the hole right now. They got to free up money somewhere. So yeah, backup is not going to be a huge priority. Now, James Cook here at running back, he is in yellow. People don't like that because they love James Cook. Now, I like James Cook too, but I have to talk to you guys about some issues with James Cook that could lead to them bringing in a complementary piece, right? And there's two. One is that he's not that big a guy, and that's obvious. And they went out and they tried to get a bruiser back, as you can see looking at this chart. Latavius Murray, Damien Harris, Leonard Fournette. They tried all these guys out. Latavius Murray was fine, but no one really became like the 1-2 punch. Like James Cook he still led the team in carries, still led the team in receptions, right? So that's one side of it, that they could be looking for a guy to supplement the bruising part of the run game, which is fine for us in fantasy because we care most about receptions. A target is worth more than a carry. It's been mathematically proven by Scott Barrett. So as long as getting those targets, we like it. Now, the other side of the coin here that is problematic is his pass blocking, where according to Pro Football Focus, James Cook graded out at running back 129 out of like 134 in pass blocking. He led up like 10 pressures, 2 sacks. He had a very difficult time pass blocking, to the point where Latavius Murray actually ended up playing more pass blocking snaps than James Cook on the season, especially down the stretch. They trusted Latavius Murray to understand the scheme and to get those snaps. And people might say, "Oh, I don't care about pass blocking. I care about running routes and receiving," which the thing is, to maximize your number, you have to be good at all of it, because if you can't be trusted for a 2-minute drill, you can't be trusted to be on the field for these pass block snaps, you're not going to be out there for the audibles, and you're not going to be out there for the checkdowns, and you're not going to be out there for those plays. So we need James Cook to figure out that part of the game. There are plenty of guys who have figured out, and there are also plenty of guys who aren't that good at pass blocking. They're just so good at catching passes that it doesn't matter. Like Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara have never really graded out that well at pass blocking, but you're not going to take him out of the game. So James Cook could be all right there. He might be, again, the full every down back. I just worry that this team has wanted to bring in another heavy plotter back, and he has trouble with pass blocking. Like that sounds, and I kind of foreshadowed this earlier, that sounds exactly like Zeke Elliott, right? You look at what Zeke Elliott was doing with the Cowboys and why Tony Pollard wasn't getting the full job. It's because Zeke was good on rundowns and he was good in pass protection, and that split the backfield, right? And that was problematic for Tony Pollard for a long time. Maybe they do bring in Zeke exactly to do that. I mean, they don't have the money for Derrick Henry, but that would be obviously Derrick Henry, James Cook, 1-2 punch would be awesome, but that's not going to happen. But like guys like Gus Edwards, Zeke Elliott, A.J. Dillon, Donta Foreman, maybe Latavius Murray coming back again. Like they're going to need to do something. You can't just have Nyheim Hines and James Cook. Those are the only 2 guys on the contract. And people forgot. You might be like, wait a second, where was Nyheim Hines all year? Nyheim Hines, he had that accident where he was sitting on a jet ski and somebody ran into him and basically tore his ACL. Like Nyheim Hines, we don't know if he's going to be back or what level he's going to be back. He was mostly a kick or punt returner before, right? Ty Johnson's an unrestricted free agent. He can return kicks. He returned kicks. He was basically did Nyheim Hines' job while Nyheim Hines was out. Like you never know. Yeah, Tommy, get in the game. Cook Brothers Unite. Maybe. I know Dalvin said he didn't want that, but maybe at this stage they would, right? And yeah, Foreman does feel like a New England guy, right? Like LeGarrette Blount or Corey Dillon. It could happen. But Foreman would be a good. I mean, he doesn't catch passes at all, so it would be a good combo of like Foreman just for the plotting work and James Cook in the dynamic work. Then James Cook is still highly fantasy relevant, or maybe they just draft somebody or bring in, cheap players, and James Cook is the man every down. That's what I want for fantasy football. But I have to be the bearer of bad news and the Prince of Darkness at times. Just pointing out that they have one guy under contract and the other guy tore his knee up in a jet ski accident. So, they're going to add players. Spoiler alert, there's going to be more running backs than that. So that's it for running backs. On the wide receivers, and I accidentally put running back next to Stephon Diggs. He is, in fact, a wide receiver. The reason Stephon Diggs is red is because there are trade rumors, and he acknowledged them himself. That's the thing, is he's like, I'm preparing for whatever. I'm going to be ready no matter what. So we have to put him in red as a guy that could be released or traded, because he could be traded. He's not going to be released. I looked at the contract. It's not even possible to release him. There's no monetary value in it. Also, trading him doesn't have a ton of monetary value. So it would really have to be a situation where they can If they trade him as a post June 1 designation, they could save $19 million this year. So if they're really in the hole, which they kind of are, then maybe they do that, or it's an attitude thing. But this team would be in big trouble if they lose Stephon Diggs. They would, then all of a sudden they're not just one wide receiver away. They need a whole wide receiver room because Gabriel Davis is on his way out. He's a unrestricted free agent, and I don't think he's the guy. And then Khalil Shakir, I know people on Twitter love him. He's like a darling or whatever, but he's just not, to me, he's not a full-time wide receiver, right? And what this team needs is just want to compete and potentially win the Super Bowl is just one other full-time wide receiver opposite Stephon Diggs they can trust. Because they hit on Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, they can run a lot of two tight end sets, and they obviously use fullback Reggie Gilliam, so they don't need a full-time wide receiver 3, right? All you need is Stephon Diggs back, and you need the best possible wide receiver 2 that you can get opposite Stephon Diggs. And then Khalil Shakir is your guy that comes in on third downs, and he also returns punts and kicks and stuff, right? It's like, is that so bad? No. Well, he returns punts, he doesn't return kicks. So that's all you need. You got Justin Shorter, who is a draft pick. He missed the whole year with the hamstring, but his contract is dirt cheap, so he'll be around. Deontay Hardy, what he did is he returned a lot. He returned virtually all their kicks, but the reason I have him red here, he's under contract, but they could save over $4 million by releasing him, and they're like 51 million in the hole. I think they could find somebody else to return kicks for cheaper, somebody who's already there, right? Khalil Shakir, for instance. So you just you let Hardy go. Actually, I apologize. He didn't return kicks. He returned the punts. So you just let Deontay Hardy go. You release him. You take the money, and then you have Shakir return the punts, right? Trent Sherfield, you don't need him because he was kind of going up against Khalil Shakir, but Shakir proved that he's a better slot receiver. So you can let Sherfield go. So I think what this team's got to do, I mean, man, they're not going to afford Pittman or Mike Evans or any of those guys unless they do some crazy restructuring. If they do that, then great. But we can't really predict that because they're $51 million in the hole. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and a bunch of stars would have to give up a bunch of money to make it happen. So it's not going to happen as of this moment. The best guys they could maybe convince to come there to try and win would be like Marquise Brown, maybe. I mean, Marquise Brown, probably, he's a free agent. Maybe they could convince him, like, hey, if you want to try and win a championship, we got a spot for you opposite of Stephon Diggs where you can play every snap. We'll do like a 1-year deal so you can get paid the following year, but you can do a prove it 1-year deal here. This is the place to do it. You could do that, man. Otherwise, you're looking at Gabe Davis bringing him back, or, guys like DJ Chark, Kendrick Bourne, I guess, Curtis Samuel, Nelson, one of the Ravens guys, right? Odell or Nelson Aguilar, but I don't know, man. There's not a lot out there. This is the team, honestly, they should spend up. You bring Diggs back, and then you draft a wide receiver as high as possible. Let me know in the chat if you guys have anybody you think, obviously Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors are probably going to go way too early for the Bills unless they trade up. But like, if you think there's a guy that would be a great fit, let me know in the chat. I would love to hear what you guys think on that. I'm going to dig into the prospects right after we finish up this free agency stuff, but I think this stuff is so important to me. It helps me figure out what the landing spots are going to be, and then I can start looking at the types of players we got out there and start assigning them to different teams, right? It's a huge part of my process. So, but that's it for wide receivers, man. At tight end, I love Dalton Kincaid, and Dalton Kincaid to me is a huge buy at fantasy football, specifically because this team has no money. And it's going to be very difficult for them to go out and just get a second pass catcher. I think right now he is the second best pass catcher on the team. So because if it was a team with a ton of money that needed a wide receiver 2, or they had like the 5th pick in the draft, then you're worried for Kincaid because you say, oh man, they're definitely going to bring somebody in. But in this case, they're so strapped, they're probably looking at Kincaid and they're saying, hey man, like, we need you to step up and be a dog. And the thing is, because Sam Laporta had such a good year, it kind of makes us forget that Dalton Kincaid quietly had the most receptions a Bills tight end has ever had in the history of ever, right? No Bills tight end had more catches than Dalton Kincaid this year. So if there was no Sam Laporta, we'd be going crazy about his rookie season because rookie tight ends very rarely do anything at all. So I'm excited about Kincaid. I think he's a buy right now. Absolutely. I mean, we do this every year where we say, oh, Sam Laporta is going to have a better career than Dalton Kincaid. That's a fact. And we don't know that for sure. We've seen this all the time. In 2010, Mike Williams, not the Chargers Mike Williams, the Bucs Mike Williams, came out and had the best rookie year of any wide receiver by far. He had like 1,000 yards, like 9 touchdowns. Mike Williams, 2010. And the other wide receivers from that class were Dez Bryant and Demaryius Thomas and Antonio Brown and Emmanuel Sanders and Eric Decker and Golden Tate. And when all was said and done, the Bucks, Mike Williams, actually ended up on the Bills at the end of his career, and he was nobody even remembers. He's not even the top Mike Williams wide receiver we think of when someone says wide receiver Mike Williams, right? So just keep in mind, whoever has the best rookie year, that doesn't mean that they're going to have the best career. And Dalton Kincaid, at the end of the day, could easily end up being the best tight end from this draft class. And I don't think that's crazy at all. So go out and buy Dalton Kincaid, pay a cheaper price than you're going to pay for Sam Laporta. That's for sure. Dalton Kincaid, we're in. We like him, right? Dawson Knox, he's going to be there. He's in green because like he's not going anywhere. And they're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. So we're going to see plenty of Dawson Knox. We're going to see plenty of Dalton Kincaid, but Dalton Kincaid plays more wide receiver, Knox more inline. What up, Stacks? Thanks for joining us, brother. Thanks for popping in. Here's what we're doing. If you're just getting here, man, we're hitting on everybody in free agency. Who's locked in? The green guys are locked into the team and their role. The white guys are free agents. The yellow guys are going to be on the team, but we don't know if they're going to have the same role or what their role is going to be. And the red guys, they could be released. They could be traded. So don't be scared that Stephon Diggs is listed as red. He acknowledged trade rumors himself. So that's why he's there. So that's the Bills, man. That's the rundown on this team. If you want to take advantage, I might as well say right now, because I just gave you well, I got rid of the wrong person there. I got to put myself up. I gave you the whole spiel right now on why I love Dalton Kincaid and why I'm looking to buy him at his current price. Either trade for him, get him in a startup, or maybe acquire a team that already has him. I just laid that all out. If you want to take advantage of that, if you're not playing Dynasty fantasy football right now, where we're still out there doing all sorts of trades and moves, everybody else that does like casual gamers that do redraft, they're done, and they're just kind of speculating or like talking about the draft. We're still playing. Like if you play Dynasty, we play all year. I play over at FFPC. If you want to play there, use promo code Coop, COOP. They'll give you $25 when you deposit 35 or more at myffpc.com. And there's 2 ways to jump in over there. You can either do a startup, in which case you can get Dalton Kincaid way after guys like Sam Laporta and Trey McBride. Brock Bowers, I just saw that the rookie Brock Bowers, even before the draft, they're projecting him to go as like the tight end 2 in these startup drafts. Crazy, right? Like right after Laporta, which is nuts. Like you can get Kincaid, or if you don't want to do a startup, I think this is even more fun. You go out and take over an orphan team, right? So over at FFPC, they never close the leagues down. They just take the teams and if somebody has to leave or whatever, then you can buy in and take that team. So you can go find a team that has Kincaid and a bunch of players you like, and you keep those players. And then you look at all the other players you don't like, and you have the golden opportunity to trade them away. Like it's so much fun to take a team and be like, okay, you know what? Because if you do a startup, you love all the guys already. Like those are your babies. If you do an orphan team, then you can trade away all the guys you don't like, and that's even more fun. Honestly, you have the golden, the green light there. So go to myffpc.com, use promo code Coop. They'll give you $25 when you deposit 35 or more, and they'll give you a leg up versus starting your own league. Now you got to chase people down for dues. You got to pay your own money. So go get set up over there. I actually one time took over. Just a quick sidebar. I took over an orphan team and a Sirius XM team from Lisa Ann. Lisa Ann's amazing, but she unfortunately at the time was so busy she didn't pay attention to the team for an entire year and forfeited the draft picks. And the team had 3 guys on it that were retired already, like Brent Selleck and Rob Gronkowski. Team was in a lot of pain, but it was a lot of fun to go in and trade and rebuild. And I actually brought the team all the way back to prominence. Matt Deutsch, producer behind the glasses in the league, brought the team all the way back to prominence. And right when I was ready to compete, they shut the league down. At FFPC, a league has never been shut down, according to Eric Bachman over there. So go get set up. A lot of fun, man. But we're going through all these teams, allocated 15 minutes for each team. Now we're behind, right? No more talking about FFPC. I love them. We all got them all set up. From here on out, we're just talking football. So we just did the Bills. Next team up is going to be the Miami Dolphins. And I'll tell you what, with the Bills and the Dolphins, and this is kind of tough to stomach as an NFL fan to hear this, your team could have won and you have virtually all the pieces in place. You just didn't. And that hurts. Only one team gets to win. So every year, 31 teams lose and they all panic and they all sit back and say, what do we change? What do we got to do? this team could have won, man. I've seen the Bills and the Dolphins beat each other. I've seen them beat the Chiefs. Actually, I don't know if Tua's ever beat the Chiefs, but I've seen the Bills beat the Chiefs. I've seen the Dolphins beat the Ravens. I've seen them beat the Bengals without Joe Burrow. But I mean, like these teams we know that these teams can compete and they have a lot of the weapons already in place. So my advice, if you're a fan, don't panic. You know what I mean? This happened to Philip Rivers never won because he was going to go up against Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers. It's like it's tough, man. It's tough to win. So just enjoy that your team is good and don't panic in the offseason if they don't make a ton of crazy moves. Like the team as is can probably win. I'm going to get to the one big move for this team that I would do at tight end. So a little alluding there. But first, let's look at the other positions. Quarterback Tua. I like Tua. I didn't like Tua originally. Left-handed quarterbacks doesn't look normal to me, right? It's very strange. If you go there's highlight reels of like James Harden and Tua where they're flipped and they're right-handed, and it honestly is more aesthetically pleasing to me. It makes a lot more sense to me. But I will say this: I've grown on Tua. He knows how to operate in this system. He can run it to a T. He can make all the throws that they were asked him to make in this system, right? And I think he deserves to get paid. Whatever Dak Prescott's going to get paid, which Dak Prescott's going to get a lot. Right, he might even get a new contract that sets the bar because the cap's going up. He might beat Joe Burrow's contract because he just had his best career he's ever had. Dak Prescott, he was like QB3 or whatever it was. You know what I mean? Like so, he could get paid a lot of money. He's a lot older than Tua. I think whatever Dak gets, just give Tua that, and then we'll move on with our lives. Does that sound so bad? Sounds pretty good to me. So they got to pay this guy. They got to keep this guy, right? Unless he wants to go with the Kyle Shanahan approach. I know Mike McDaniel's a Shanahan guy and just, have the kind of ego where it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. And then you never win the Super Bowl because you never truly have an elite quarterback. Well, I mean, Brock Purdy could be elite. Today's not the day for that discussion or that argument. That could get me in a lot of trouble. I will say this. I like Tua in this system. I think they should pay him and keep him. I also like Mike White as the backup, and the new rule with the third quarterbacks being active without having to be on the active day, game day roster lets you keep Skylar Thompson around, as the third quarterback. His contract is fine. It's like at the end of the day, they'll have to decide if they want to carry 2 or 3 quarterbacks, if it's just a roster spot thing. But as far as third quarterbacks go, I don't mind Skylar Thompson at all. At running back, both Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane are yellow simply because we don't know what the roles are going to be exactly. Like Raheem Mostert was a starter. No question about it. And I said this in a bunch of videos. I said, hey, this team likes Raheem Mostert a lot. They drafted Devon Achane because he's a speedster like Mostert. So they drafted this guy to be another version of the guy they have. That could just mean that Raheem Mostert's the starter, and this guy is the next version of him, right? Raheem Mostert is 31, going on 32, so eventually he will be gone. But this year he's still there. So it could just honestly, there's no reason not to do it in a similar fashion to the way they did it and just kind of split the carries. It's not ideal for fantasy, but this offense with the Teron Armstead at left tackle and Alec Ingold at fullback is conducive to running the football, and they're going to do a lot of great things. So I'll draft both of them. I don't care. They're both awesome. In Dynasty, obviously, Devon Achane, like at some point, it's going to be fully wheels up for him when Mostert is either hurt or gone. In this running back room, Salvon Ahmed is going to almost certainly be gone. He was just a leftover from the rebuild period where he got some carries in that situation, but, it is what it is. Chris Brooks is a restricted free agent, so they could bring him back for fairly cheap if they want to. That's going to be up to them. So actually, he's an undrafted free agent that could be released with next to no money. I have him labeled incorrectly in there now that I think of it. He's still technically on the team, but he could be released with next to nothing. We'll have to see. I mean, I think they keep him around just because he's on a fairly cheap deal. Jeff Wilson's the one I could see them releasing. I know they like Wilson. Mike McDaniel liked him going back to the time with the 49ers. But the fact of the matter is that he's due $3.78 million. And $3 million of that can come off the books if they release him. And this team is in the hole for cap money, just like pretty deep in the hole. So they're going to need to do something to even it out. And every penny counts. And Jeff Wilson, he was honestly a healthy. He got hurt, and then when he came back, he was a healthy scratch for some games. So it's like he's the highest paid running back on the team right now. Believe it or not, Jeff Wilson is paid. He's getting more than Raheem Mostert. Achane's on a rookie deal, so. If you got a guy that's your highest paid running back, he's not really doing anything, And but they might be able to have him renegotiate to free up some money and stick around. That would probably be great for everybody. At wide receiver, Anthony pointed out in the chat. This is what I love about some of these teams that are using this Shanahan tree offense is that they bring in a fullback and they use the fullback a ton. Alec Ingold played almost 40% of the snaps. That means that the targets are highly consolidated at the top because the third wide receiver does not play much. Juwan Jennings does not play much. Braxton Berrios does not play much, right? So the setup they had was this. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are the two full-time guys out there on the outside running high A-dot routes. Braxton Berrios plays in the slot, and he also returns kicks. In fact, he returned virtually every kick and punch for this team, which makes him a valuable player. And then Cedrick Wilson was the next man up. So when Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle got hurt, and both of them did at certain points, Braxton Berrios did not play more. Cedrick Wilson took over. So that's the way they want it. They want to have like the understudy for the two big dogs. Both those guys are free agents. If Berrios comes back, he's almost certainly to be the slot guy and return all the kicks and punts. It would have to be an affordable deal because they're the salary cap situation. But I mean, having a guy that can do both and play slot, that is valuable. It saves you a lot of roster spots. So I could see them bringing Braxton Berrios back on an affordable deal. With Cedrick Wilson, they overpaid him in the first place. The production they got from him for the contract that they offered him was not ideal. Like I don't see a world where they bring back Cedrick Wilson, man. He didn't live up to the contract. He's an unrestricted free agent. I say bye-bye to him. With these other guys, River Cracraft, he's kind of just floating around, right? Like he caught a couple touchdown passes, but like to me, he's not a guy you have to bring back. And Eric Ezukanma, he's the weirdest one of all because he ended up on the non NFL injury list because he re-aggravated an injury that he suffered in college, a neck injury. And I guess the rule is if the original injury is from something off the field, and you have to have it this way because let's say you go out and hurt your knee on a jet ski like Nyheim Hines, and then you come and play football, and then you say, "Oh, I hurt my knee again." Like you didn't hurt your knee playing football, you hurt it on the jet ski. That's what happened with EE here. Is he hurt his neck in college and then re-aggravated it, but it's technically a college injury. So they had to put him on the NFI list. And because the rules are different on that, he didn't get a chance to play all year. Never got cleared. The rules for clearing these guys is a lot stricter because you have to make sure if we're going to pay out insurance and all these things for this guy, is the injury an NFL injury at work or is it an injury that you brought with you? So I don't know. He tweeted out, I want to play football. We'll have to see what his role is going to be and if he can come back and make the team. But he's just a weird guy. In fantasy football, I'm not interested in anybody except Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. That's the bottom line because they don't use a lot of three wide receiver sets. They use a ton of fullback, and that's the way. Now, tight end, this is where it's most interesting for the Miami Dolphins. 100%. If I'm the Miami Dolphins, the missing piece to the puzzle of the weapons is the two-way tight end, right? You look at the offense they run, it's the same offense they run with the 49ers, right? George Kittle is the perfect two-way tight end. He can block, he can catch. This team they inherited had two tight ends. They had Mike Gesicki and Durham Smythe. Mike Gesicki can catch, but he can't block. Durham Smythe can block, can't really catch. The blocking was more important to them, which is why they kept Durham Smythe and they let Mike Gesicki leave. I think the biggest mistake the Miami Dolphins made last year in free agency was not addressing the position, and they should have gotten Dalton Schultz, but the curveball is that the Houston Texans hired a bunch of 49ers coaches as well, and D'Amico Ryans and Bobby Slowick, and they run the same offense, and they said, Dalton Schultz is perfect for this. He's a two-way tight end. We're going to pay Dalton Schultz, right? So the Dolphins missed out on the Schultz wagon. Schultz is now an unrestricted free agent. If the Houston Texans do not sign Dalton Schultz, the Miami Dolphins should roll out the red carpet immediately for this player. He is a true two-way tight end, unlike Durham Smythe, and he knows the system because he just played for Bobby Slowick, right? And you couldn't find a more perfect player for the Miami Dolphins. If they can't get Dalton Schultz, if the Texans bring Schultz back, the only other good two-way tight end really available in free agency is Hunter Henry. And I think that if Dalton Schultz it goes back to the Texans, you should immediately be calling Hunter Henry and bring Hunter Henry in to be the discount version of George Kittle in this offense. And then Durham Smythe can be the Charlie Warner which is the guy behind George Kittle. It's basically just like all he does is block. That's perfect for Durham Smythe, right? That's the way it should be. So after that, I mean, like Gerald Everett doesn't block well enough. But obviously, Mike Gesicki is never coming back to the Dolphins, right? It's like Austin Hooper. Who else is there? If they're not going to draft somebody, it's Dalton Schultz or it's Hunter Henry, or else this team is just rolling once again into a season with an offense that isn't complete. It's not the offense that they want to run. So for this team, I don't care about the wide receiver three. They don't need to spend up at wide receiver three. A lot of people look at it and say, oh, if they just had a third wide receiver, that player isn't a full-time player. Durham Smythe blew all these other guys, Cedrick Wilson, Braxton Berrios, out of the water when it comes to snaps. And he didn't do anything. He had one game with 5 catches. He had like 5 games with no catches. Like, you got to get a better guy in that particular role in this offense. That is the number one priority for the Miami Dolphins. And as a Patriots fan, I don't want to see him do it. I don't want to see him get Dalton Schultz or Hunter Henry, but I acknowledge that that's what they should be doing. That's what they should be doing. And if they, in the draft, they have to focus on a two-way tight end. Brock Bowers, I'm not even sure. Like, people are screaming for Brock Bowers for that position. He is, to me, ideally plays a lot of, slot. He plays a lot of wide receiver. I'm not even sure he's the best fit for this. Like, they don't need the pass catching as much. They just need a really good blocker that can catch passes better than Durham Smythe, which is Dalton Schultz or Hunter Henry, right? So there you go. That's the Miami Dolphins. Alec Ingold is a key part of this team. Just to wrap it up, what's interesting is now these teams that are using the Shanahan offense and coaching tree, the first thing they do is go get a fullback. One of the first things this team did is they went to get Teron Armstead to be their Trent Williams, and they went to get Alec Ingold to be their Kyle Juszczyk. When D'Amico Ryans and Bobby Slowick went over to the 49ers, the first thing they did was sign Andrew Beck. They already had Laramie Tunsil, right? So when Bobby Slowick goes to another team, the first thing he's going to do, this year they convinced him to stay, gave him a lot more money, but next year he probably will go to another team. When he goes to be a head coach or an offensive coordinator of another team, the first thing they're going to do is go out and get the best possible fullback. And I think it's kind of intriguing that the fullback is back, baby. Let's go. I'm a tight end guy, but you got to speak up for all these positions because, as soon as they take away the fullback, now they're trying to take away the tight end, So shout out to the fullbacks. I'm like the Lorax of the tight ends and fullbacks. I speak for the tight ends and fullbacks because someone's got to speak up for them, dude. Someone's got to speak up for them. They're already coming for kicker and defense in our fantasy leagues. And I see people saying like, oh yeah, just get rid of the tight end position. No, shut up. Keep the tight end position. Stop trying to make it easier for yourself. If you're a serious fantasy gamer, you want this to be as hard as possible to give yourself an advantage. Have a bunch of positions, have a bunch of flexes, have a bunch of deep benches, right? That gives an advantage to us because we're here on February 16th talking about Alec Ingold, right? That's how we win. So that you want tight end, you want all these flexes, right? Add a fullback spot, dude. We'll find the best fullback, dude. It's obviously Kyle Juszczyk, but dude, Patrick Ricard, there's sneaky guys out there. You know what I'm saying? Shout out Maine Black Bears. So that's where I'm at. And that's it for the Miami Dolphins. Let's get to the last team here in this psychotic solo show. And that's the New York Football Jets, right? And this one, man, it's interesting because Aaron Rodgers is going to be back and he's going to play. Like, that's the idea. Zach Wilson, there's a lot, like Mac Jones, there's just a lot of talk about trading him and getting him out. As far as backup goes, it's interesting because Rodgers at one point did not want to acknowledge at all Jordan Love, just like Brett Favre didn't want to acknowledge him, and he didn't want to help a backup. But I think at this stage, the way he's talked about Zach Wilson, like, he understands that he's not going to play forever, and I think he would be receptive to having a backup there to kind of, that he would actually share some secrets with and say, hey, you know what? Like, this is how you do this job, and this is how you can take over this job when I'm gone. So maybe they can bring in like a reclamation type guy, or yeah, Anthony, that's a good call. Bo Nix, right? Somebody you don't have to draft at 3 overall or whatever, right? Yeah. So, Tommy in the chat digs to the Jets. I don't know if the Bills are going to do all that, dude. Trading within the division is, you don't do it if you're going to look back and lose to that team in the playoffs. So that's where I draw the line. Teams do trade in the division, right? Patriots traded Drew Bledsoe to the Bills, and Wes Welker, the Dolphins traded Wes Welker to the Patriots, right? They traded Devontae Parker to the Patriots, but I don't think you do it with Stephon Diggs. That's a little spicy for me, Tommy. But yeah, so Aaron Rodgers is good. They got to find some sort of backup. I like to see them draft somebody in the later rounds or bring in, like a Drew Lock. There you go, Drew Lock. Because they're not going to bring Darnold back. But like Drew Lock is a young guy that, he could have a little juice in the tank. You can see what you get, right? And he can fill in if Rodgers gets hurt, which is what matters. At running back, Brees Hall, super mega stud. Came back from the ACL, actually finishes like RB2. So like Brees Hall, hopefully you were able to get a hold of it. It's so hard to trade for guys when they get hurt. Shout out to our producer here, Matt Deutsch, behind the glass. He was in on Brees Hall, man. And we did I commentated on a live draft that he was doing, and I was kind of making fun of him a little bit for drafting all these injured guys. But dude, Brees Hall, if you could keep yourself afloat early in the season, he was kind of league winner status, man. He had some monster games. So shout out to Matt on that one. Crush that pick. Is he Abanikanda? Israel Abanikanda? I like him. Everyone likes him. He's just stuck behind Brees Hall. I wish another team would have drafted him, but he fell to like the 5th round. So that's it for him. He's just got to play as the backup. He actually is a pretty decent handcuff, in my opinion, right? If Brees Hall goes down, I kind of like the idea of Izzy, Xavier Valade, just another deep cut guy. They're going to have to fill that roster out with somebody else. But I think Brees and Izzy also returns kicks, which is nice. So, you really just need maybe a thick boy plotter, or somebody that also like the perfect third running back for this team is probably honestly somebody who plays on like 5 special teams units, right? Somebody that's on punt, kick, both punts, both kicks, the extra points or whatever, like that would be a good guy to have because I like the 2 guys at the top. So I think they're all right, man. I go through all these teams and I've just been bashing on like, they're going to replace this guy or they're going to take away some of his work or blah, blah, blah. It's nice to be able to say, hey, you know what? I like these 2 players and I think they should just leave it, wide receiver, Garrett Wilson, super mega star. He's going to have big seasons when he has a real quarterback. There's a lot of that going around in this league. Terry McLaurin, hopefully finally going to get a decent quarterback for the first time ever. Right. But it happens, man. Quarterback matters. You can't throw the ball yourself. Garrett Wilson is a very good player and he's going to be very good. The thing is, you can't really get him. You can't really trade for him because the person that has him still believes in him. So there's no buy low on Garrett Wilson. You have to buy high. I'm willing to buy high. Right. So then I want to skip to Alan Lazard here. Yeah, man. Alan Lazard. So because he's best friends with Rodgers, he's probably going to be there. I would love to see them bring in a better second wide receiver. I think that this has been a flaw of Rodgers, that he's so good and has his loyalty to guys that maybe aren't that good. Like, throwing 13 touchdowns to James Jones that one year was kind of weird. He did have super mega stars when they won, like Jordy Nelson and Greg Jennings and all these guys. But now I think he's like, he might be confusing guys being actually really good with Rodgers being the, 3-time back-to-back MVP. So like Robert Tonyan and Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, I don't know, man. I don't like it, but he's probably going to be there. Here's a crazy stat for you. Alan Lazard, his cap hit this year is more than all the Packers pass catchers combined. So Alan Lazard, his cap hit right now is more than if you added up Dontavian Wicks, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Bo Melton, Luke Musgrave, and Tucker Kraft. If you add all those up, it still comes up to shorter than the $13 million that Alan Lazard is due. That's what drafting can do for you. And I think this team is in a position to potentially draft a wide receiver or go after one in free agency, to be the other guy. Xavier Gibson, I actually don't mind him as a slot guy. Like ideally, you would just find a way to not have Lazard, and it would be Garrett Wilson and then another good wide receiver with Gibson in the slot. Gibson's not a bad slot guy, and he returned virtually every punt and kick for this team. So he's a valuable player. I mean, in an ideal world, he's your wide receiver 4, and you have like a high end, because Garrett Wilson plays a ton of slot. Garrett Wilson actually plays the same way as CeeDee Lamb and Keenan Allen and Cooper Kupp, and Chris Godwin, where if it's 3 wide receivers out there, he's in the slot. And then if you bring in 2 tight ends or a fullback, whatever, and there's only 2 wide receivers, he moves outside. So he actually led the team in slot snaps. That's the best configuration for fantasy football upside. Is the guy, I just think of the names I just mentioned, Cooper Kupp and Keenan Allen and all these guys. Like that's the best setup. So Garrett Wilson's good there, and it lets you be flexible. Like they need a big split end, which is Alan Lazard. But if they had like T. Higgins, that'd be great, but it's not going to happen, right? And then and then you want just the other guy can either be a field stretcher or another slot guy. pick and choose, but like, I don't know. I think they need to do more there. These other guys, Charles Irvin, Jason Brownlee actually was okay, but like he's just like the way off depth guy that you only use if in case of emergency, right? At tight end, Tyler Conklin, lame. CJ Uzoma probably getting released. I actually, in my world where it's very deep dynasty leagues, I have no Tyler Conklin and I have no CJ Uzoma and I have no Jeremy Rucker, but I do have some Kenny Yoboa and I do have some Zach Kuntz because these guys are actually athletic, incredibly athletic. In fact, if we talk about Yaboa and Zach Kuntz, and they profile more as like pass catchers and wide receivers, they're very raw talents. But like, not saying they're going to score more points than Tyler Conklin this year, but I'm saying that Tyler Conklin is just not the guy who's ever going to like really break into the top 5 or 6 or 7 or top 10 at any point. I just don't think he's that good. He's not particularly fast. He's more of a blocker type guy. He doesn't break tackles. He's just not that guy to me. Sorry, Tyler Conklin. Sorry to Tyler Conklin's parents if you're listening to the show. I mean, your son's doing very well. He's a multimillionaire starting tight end for a real NFL team. So like, whatever I say doesn't matter. It's fantasy football. He doesn't have any upside. Whereas these other guys, I just like stashing him and saying, what if this guy does get a chance at some point? And now the rubber meets the road with the athleticism and the opportunity. That's how we found guys like Logan Thomas, who was a converted quarterback and just had to learn the position. And then when he finally got the shot, he was awesome. Darren Waller was drafted as a wide receiver, washed out of the league on drugs, came back as a tight end, and was awesome. So that's what we look for, man. So that's why I'm like, you know what? I'd rather pay nothing to stash these other guys for free than pay whatever it costs for Tyler Conklin, which I imagine is something. So that's it here. And might as well hit this last question in the chat. If anybody has chat questions, feel free to throw them out. I know I'm like psychotically yelling into the mic every Friday for these shows and kind of like, like drooling and spitting. But if you have questions, throw them in there. We can talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. This is just what I'm working on. It's how I get ready for the season. It's how I get ready for free agency. It's how I get ready for the draft. Free agency opens in less than 30 days. It opens on March 11th. That's why we got to go through these now. In fact, one of these weeks, I'm going to have to do 2. I might do 2 in the same week, do like a special edition Thursday show or something like that. So that's where we're at. Anthony in the chat, Matt, if you could pull that question up, throw it on the screen. He says, Dynasty question, Coop/chat. Have a super flex team with Rodgers and Russell Wilson, assuming Russell, not Zach. Try to move the package while I have some Rodgers value. QBs are Dak, Love, Carr, and Rodgers. Yeah, I would absolutely do that. What I would do, so you keep Dak, Love, and Carr. Dak and Love, I like those guys long-term a lot. So you're going to start those guys every week. What I would do with Rodgers is you have to target a team that's win now. And you have to be very careful that you're not giving a team that you're competing with the key piece to beat you. But I'm not sure Rodgers is even that. But no like rebuilding team. You go through and look at all the teams that have a bunch of draft picks and a bunch of young players. They're not going to trade for Rodgers. You have to find the person in your league that thinks he's a win now team and sell him Rodgers for whatever you can get back, right? And just try and make sure it's either something for you that's going to help you long term or help you right now. Again, with your team with Dak and Love, you're probably competing right now as well. But you have to with trading a guy like Rodgers, it's not so much just hypothetically thinking about what you can get back. It's about thinking about who in their right mind is trading for this person. And it has to be somebody that maybe has two good quarterbacks and their third quarterback is awful. And you just say to them, hey, you need somebody for bye weeks. You need somebody in case of injury. You need Aaron Rodgers. So that's how I would go about it. And Anthony, you hit me up on Twitter, you hit me up in the Fantasy Alarm Discord, and find one of those teams and shoot me over their roster, and I'll take a look and I'll let you know who I think you should be making that swap for, man. So definitely, yeah. There you go. Matt Deutsch, always on top of things right there. Get a Fantasy Alarm All Pro subscription. You can ask me questions in the Discord directly. I have my own little channel on there called Coop's Corner, where you can just ask me whatever. I'm also in the Dynasty one. I'm hanging out over there. We're going to be doing the Fantasy Alarm Best Ball drafts starting very soon. So make sure you're set up with FFPC as well. Use code Coop, COOP, over myffpc.com. But that's it. Didn't feel like an hour, but it was a full hour on 4 teams and what's going on in free agency. So thank you in the chat for hanging out as always. Matt, thank you behind the glass. Thank you, especially all you guys, for making Fantasy Alarm, what it is and what it's been, and allowing us to do these shows that just won an award, that just won an award at the Fantasy Sports Gaming Association conference in Vegas. Matt was there. Howard Bender was there. Usually I go. I wasn't there this time. We won an award for best video content for a mid-sized company, man. So, and that doesn't happen without you guys. Like, I'm here doing what I do, but without you guys, nobody sees it. We don't have an opportunity to do it. So thank you guys so much. Cheers. And I'll catch you guys on Wednesday of next week.